The image of a high-tech shield protecting a nation has been the bedrock of global security for over a decade. But what happens when the math of modern warfare turns that shield into a sieve? You have seen the footage of glowing streaks intercepting rockets over Tel Aviv, a display of technological dominance that seemed to defy the very laws of probability. Yet today we are standing at the precipice of a terrifying new reality where the most sophisticated air defense system on the planet has officially hit its limit. By the end of this deep dive, you are going to understand exactly how a grassroots strategy of cheap drones and mass-produced rockets managed to bankrupt the world's most advanced military doctrine, and I am going to reveal the specific moment the launchers went silent and what that means for the future of every major city in the West. Before we go any further, I want to ask for your help in proving a point to a colleague of mine who handles media analytics in London. He told me that deep-dive geopolitical reporting is too complex for a general audience, and that no one would stay engaged for a video that actually explains the mechanics of power. But I know that you are here because you want the truth, and you value real insight over clickbait. So let's show him that this community is the most informed on the platform by hitting that like button and helping this reach the people who need to hear it. To understand why the Iron Dome is currently gasping for air, you have to look at the cold, hard numbers that the Pentagon is frantically trying to crunch behind closed doors, because while we were all told that technology would always win, we forgot that war is ultimately a game of logistics and industrial capacity. Later in this video, I am going to expose a secret transport manifest that shows exactly which U.S. military bases are being stripped of their own defenses just to keep the Middle East from falling into a total blackout. But first, we have to talk about the exhaustion trap that has been decades in the making. Imagine you are standing on a ridge and someone starts throwing stones at you, and every time they throw a stone that costs them 5 cents, you have to fire a specialized laser that costs you $500 to stop it. At first, you feel invincible because your laser never misses, but eventually, your battery starts to fade and your pockets run dry, while the person across from you has a mountain of stones that cost them practically nothing. This is the exact economic nightmare currently facing the U.S.-Israel alliance, where the cost of a single Tamir interceptor missile, the bullets of the Iron Dome, is officially verified at $50,000 per shot, and in high-intensity escalations, that price tag can spike even higher due to emergency production runs. Compare that to the rockets being fired by the thousands. These are often Qassam-style projectiles made from repurposed industrial piping and sugar-based fuel, costing roughly $800 to $1,000 to manufacture. Do the math with me. For every one rocket the adversary sends, the defender spends 50 times that amount just to break even. This isn't just a military struggle. It is a deliberate attempt to trigger a total financial collapse of the defense budget. Have you ever wondered why, despite billions in U.S. aid, there are suddenly gaps in the coverage? It is because you cannot manufacture high-precision interceptors as fast as an opponent can weld pipes together in an underground workshop. It reminds me of a story about an engineer I spoke with who worked on radar synchronization. He said that the biggest fear wasn't a single smart missile, but a dumb swarm. He likened it to a waiter trying to catch 100 falling glasses at once. No matter how fast he is, eventually, the floor is going to be covered in shards. That is what we saw on day 18 of the recent escalation. The Lion 34 strategy used by regional actors wasn't about hitting targets initially. It was about forcing the Iron Dome to overread the sky. They launched thousands of cheap, plywood drones, slow-moving targets that the radar systems are programmed to prioritize, and watched as the interceptors burned through their limited stock. When the sun set on that fateful Tuesday, the thermal signatures of the Iron Dome batteries across the southern district showed something unprecedented. They were cold, not because the threat had stopped, but because the reload trucks were empty. This is the moment the monsters were waiting for. Once the high-tier interceptors were spent on plywood and sugar fuel, the heavy ballistic missiles, carrying 3-ton warheads, emerged from their silos. These are not the small rockets you see in the news. These are strategic weapons designed to collapse entire military complexes and reinforce bunkers. When these hit, they don't just explode, they create seismic shockwaves that turn the surrounding infrastructure into dust. Can a nation truly call itself a superpower if its primary shield can be neutralized by the equivalent of hobbyist technology? You have to agree that the optics are devastating for Washington. For years, the U.S. has exported the idea that quality beats quantity, but on the modern battlefield, quantity has a quality all its own. We're seeing the total bankruptcy of the American-style defense mindset, which relies on fragile global supply chains to produce a few thousand perfect missiles, while the rest of the world has pivoted to mass-producing good enough weapons by the millions. This brings us to the Trump factor and the current political firestorm in D.C. Donald Trump made a bold promise to end regional conflicts in 72 hours, but the reality of a depleted arsenal has turned that promise into a logistical quagmire. You see, you can't just negotiate your way out of an empty warehouse. The U.S. military is currently in a global overstretch, where every interceptor sent to Israel is an interceptor taken away from the Pacific or the plains of Eastern Europe. This is a zero-sum game. If you were the commander-in-chief, would you leave your own bases in Guam or Okinawa defenseless to save a foreign ally city? That is the impossible choice currently sitting on the Resolute desk. Let's look at the Strait of Hormuz factor, because this is where your wallet gets hit. While the missiles are flying, a silent blockade is taking place. Iran has effectively signaled that the world's most important energy artery is now a filtered zone. If you are a friend of the new multipolar order, specifically Russia or China, your tankers pass through the 21-mile gap without a scratch. But if you are aligned with the West, you are facing insurance premiums that make shipping oil a suicide mission. This is why gas prices are beginning to creep toward historic highs. It's not just about the oil, it's about the security tax imposed by the collapse of Western naval dominance. Russia and China are sitting back and watching this play out like a masterclass in remote warfare. They don't need to fire a single shot at a U.S. carrier when they can provide the satellite data and the raw components for others to do it for them. It's a brilliant, albeit terrifying, strategy of death by 1,000 cuts. By draining the U.S. of its high-tech interceptors and its financial reserves, they are effectively disarming the superpower without ever declaring war. Are we witnessing the funeral of the unipolar world, where America was the sole policeman? It certainly looks that way when the policeman's gun is out of ammo and his badge is being challenged by a teenager with a drone. Think about the F-35 fighter jets, the pride of the U.S. Air Force, each costing over $100 million. In recent strikes, several of these invisible jets were reportedly damaged or destroyed on the ground because the Iron Dome wasn't there to protect their hangars. Imagine spending $100 million on a jet only to have it wrecked by a $2,000 drone because you ran out of $50,000 interceptors. It is a staggering asymmetry that should make every taxpayer's blood boil. We are essentially bringing a golden scalpel to a chainsaw fight. So, what is the payoff for the regional actors? It's the death of the petrodollar. When nations see that the U.S. cannot protect the oil flow or its closest military partners, they stop believing in the dollar as the safe haven currency. We are seeing secret deals being struck in Riyadh and Abu Dhabi to settle oil trades in yuan or rubles. This is the end game. The rockets are the distraction. The collapse of the U.S. financial hegemony is the real target. If the dollar loses its status as the world's reserve currency because we can't defend the trade routes, your savings, your mortgage, and your entire way of life will change overnight. As we approach the climax of this crisis, the biggest reveal isn't just that the ammo ran out, it's that the U.S. manufacturing base is currently unable to replace it. It takes nearly 2 years to build a sophisticated radar array and several months to assemble a batch of interceptors due to the shortage of specialized semiconductors. Meanwhile, the other side is running their factories 24/7 with no regard for environmental regulations or labor laws. We are in a race where one side is running in slow motion and the other is on a motorbike. The loops are closing, and the picture is bleak but clear. The Iron Dome failed because it was an analog solution for a digital, high-volume age. The U.S. is trapped in a quagmire because it prioritized high-cost, trophy, weapons over sustainable defense. And the global economy is at risk because the security umbrella that allowed for global trade has been torn to shreds. You now know more than 99% of the population about why the Middle East is currently a sea of fire and why the White House is in a state of quiet panic. The satisfying truth is that we are witnessing a fundamental shift in how human beings conduct conflict. The age of the superpower as a singular, untouchable entity is over. We are moving into a multipolar world where cleverness, industrial endurance, and economic resilience matter more than having the most expensive toy on the playground. You have seen the evidence of the exhaustion trap, the reality of the 3-ton warheads, and the looming shadow of the petrodollar collapse. To summarize, remember these 3 things. First, the Iron Dome's failure was an economic certainty based on the 50-to-1 cost ratio of interceptors versus rockets. Second, the U.S. is currently facing a global overstretch that leaves its own territories vulnerable. And third, the ultimate goal of this chaos is the removal of the U.S. dollar from the global energy throne. If you found this analysis valuable and you want to stay ahead of the next global shift before it hits the mainstream news, make sure you subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Leave a comment below letting me know. Do you think the U.S. should continue stripping its own defenses to save its allies, or is it time to bring the iron back home? Your voice is the most important part of this conversation. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and I will see you in the next deep dive.